Welcome to the story of endurance. Shackleton's Incredible Voyage by Alfred Lansing. This is more than just a survival tale, it's a story of leadership, resilience, and the unyielding spirit of humanity. Based on first-hand accounts and the diaries of those who lived through it, this book captures one of the most extraordinary feats of endurance in history. Why should you listen? Because Shackleton's story isn't just about surviving against impossible odds, it's about thriving in the face of despair. It's a lesson in hope, determination, and teamwork. Whether you're a leader looking for inspiration, a fan of adventure, or someone who loves tales of human triumph, this story has something for you. Now, let's dive into the frozen world of the Weddell Sea and see how Shackleton and his men braved the unimaginable. Part 1 of Endurance. Shackleton's incredible voyage plunges us into one of the most harrowing moments of the expedition, a vivid scene where survival becomes a visceral battle. The journey begins with the fateful decision to abandon the ship. By 5 p.m., the once mighty Endurance is succumbing to the relentless pressure of the ice, her wooden frame groaning and splintering under the weight of millions of tons. The crew, physically and emotionally drained after days of desperate effort, knows the fight to save the ship is lost. They aren't panicked. Instead, they move with a resigned, almost eerie calm, as if the magnitude of their plight has yet to fully sink in. Shackleton's men work methodically, transferring supplies and even the 49 sled dogs onto the ice. The dogs, strangely subdued, seem to sense the gravity of the moment. Despite the chaos, there's an odd serenity among the men. The sky is a crystalline twilight, the temperature bitterly cold at -8.5 degrees Celsius, and the only sounds are the creaks and crashes of the ice as it shifts and buckles. Yet, there is no shouting, no frantic energy, just the stoic resolve of men facing the unknown. As the crew watches, the Endurance, their home and lifeline, endures her final hours. The ship is not just a vessel. She is a living entity to them, a comrade in their adventure. Her collapse is as painful as watching a wounded animal. Her massive timbers cry out as they splinter. Her masts whip back and forth in protest, and the crushing ice begins to swallow her hull. For the men, it's as if they are witnessing the death throes of a giant creature. Shackleton's second-in-command, Frank Wild, and others like the ship's carpenter, Harry McNeish, work tirelessly to salvage what they can, but they know it's futile. By the time they move their last supplies onto the ice, the Endurance is a broken shell, crushed beyond saving. The enormity of the situation begins to dawn on the crew. They are stranded deep in the Weddell Sea, more than 1,200 miles from the nearest human outpost, and no one knows where they are. There's no radio to call for help, and even if there were, no ship or aircraft of the time could reach them. The year is 1915, and they are utterly alone in one of the most hostile environments on Earth. Shackleton, always calm and resolute, surveys the situation with grim determination. He knows the odds, but he also knows that survival depends on him keeping the men united and focused. As the ship sinks further into the ice, the men set up camp on a nearby floe. The bitter Antarctic winds cut through their clothing, and the vast, shifting ice pack stretches endlessly around them, a frozen labyrinth of pressure ridges and open leads. Shackleton names their position: 69 degrees 5 minutes south, 51 degrees 30 minutes west. The closest land is the uninhabited Powlett Island, over 300 miles away across unstable ice, and it offers little more than a faint hope of survival. Shackleton quickly makes it clear to his men: there is no rescue coming. If they are to live, they will have to save themselves. The first days on the ice are surreal. The men pitch tents and organize their supplies, but their hearts are heavy as they glance back at the ship. Though she is battered and broken, she still stands, defiant against the crushing pack ice. Shackleton sends some of the men back to retrieve last-minute items from her remains, including lumber that might be used to reinforce their lifeboats. For Alexander Macklin, one of the expedition's surgeons, the task is terrifying. Deep within the ship's hold, he can hear the groans and snaps of the collapsing structure, the ice outside battering the walls as if trying to break in. When he emerges, it's with a profound sense of relief, but also dread for what lies ahead. By October 27th, the Endurance is all but swallowed by the ice. Shackleton gathers his men and delivers a message that will define their ordeal. If we are to get out of this, we must do it ourselves. His words resonate deeply. Shackleton is not just a leader. He is their anchor, their hope. The men begin to look to him with a faith that will carry them through the darkest days. What makes this part of the story so gripping is the interplay of human endurance and the raw power of nature. The ice, vast and indifferent, is not merely an obstacle but a force of nature, shaping their destiny with crushing inevitability. Shackleton and his men, stripped of all but their most basic needs, find themselves in a primal struggle for survival. Yet, even in the face of such despair, there's a remarkable resilience. Shackleton's determination, the men's quiet courage, and their refusal to surrender to hopelessness set the tone for the epic journey that lies ahead. It's not just a story of survival. It's a testament to the indomitable human spirit. Part 2 of Endurance. Shackleton's incredible voyage captures the transformation of the men's ordeal from a desperate struggle to save their ship to an all-encompassing battle to survive in the frozen wasteland. Stranded on the ice with no chance of immediate rescue, Shackleton's leadership begins to shine. The men are now truly at the mercy of the Antarctic, where even the smallest misstep could spell disaster. Shackleton's job is no longer just to lead but to inspire hope and maintain unity, a task as formidable as the elements themselves. The camp is established on a solid floe, and life takes on a strange rhythm. Each day is marked by monotony, but beneath the surface lies the unrelenting tension of survival. Shackleton organizes tasks to keep the men busy, tending to the dogs, sorting through salvage supplies, and preparing for the inevitable march across the ice. The initial relief of being off the doomed Endurance soon gives way to the grim realization of their situation. The Weddell Sea is an unforgiving expanse of ice, constantly shifting and groaning under unseen pressures. The floes are not a stable refuge but a precarious platform, prone to cracking and breaking apart at any moment. As weeks pass, the men's physical and mental endurance is tested. The cold is merciless, and the rations, though carefully measured, are a constant reminder of their fragile supply chain. Shackleton, however, is unwavering. He makes a point to visit each tent, talk to the men, and assess their morale. He knows that survival hinges on more than just food and shelter. It depends on the collective will of his crew to endure. Shackleton's optimism, whether real or feigned, becomes their lifeline. Even the smallest gestures, like sharing a laugh or a story, are vital in keeping spirits high. The ice itself becomes an ever-present antagonist. Pressure ridges form suddenly, sending walls of ice crashing together, while leads of open water appear and then disappear just as quickly. The men become experts at reading the ice, learning to navigate its treacherous landscape. Shackleton begins scouting routes to lead them closer to open water, where they might launch the lifeboats and attempt an escape. But progress is painfully slow. Each movement across the ice requires incredible effort, as they drag heavy sledges laden with supplies and boats. The sledges often sink into soft patches of snow, forcing the men to heave and haul for hours just to gain a few yards. The dogs, essential for pulling the sledges, become both companions and burdens. Shackleton knows they are indispensable for now, but he also understands that their food supply is finite. The bond between the men and the animals grows, adding a layer of poignancy to an already dire situation. The dogs are a reminder of home, of warmth and comfort, but they are also a harsh symbol of the sacrifices survival might demand. Amid the struggle, there are moments of dark humor and camaraderie. Leonard Hussey, the meteorologist, becomes a source of entertainment with his antics and sense of humor. Frank Hurley, the expedition's photographer, continues to document their ordeal, capturing haunting images of the desolate landscape and the resilient men. Shackleton encourages such activities, knowing they serve as a distraction from the crushing monotony and fear. As the days stretch into weeks, the reality of their isolation sets in. The ice floes are drifting, carrying them farther from their intended route. Shackleton and his crew realize they are at the mercy of the currents, powerless to control their direction. The hope of reaching land grows dimmer, and yet Shackleton remains a pillar of resolve. His belief that they can and must survive becomes a rallying cry for the crew. The chapter closes with an uneasy sense of suspense. The men are alive, but the ice is unpredictable, and their position is tenuous at best. Shackleton knows that their survival depends on timing, ingenuity, and an almost superhuman level of endurance. Part 2 lays bare the immense challenges they face, not just from the Antarctic's brutal environment but from the psychological toll of their isolation. It is a testament to human resilience, to the strength that comes not just from the body but from the will to survive together. Shackleton's men are no longer explorers in pursuit of glory. They are survivors, united in a singular, desperate mission to make it out alive. Part 3 of Endurance. Shackleton's incredible voyage marks a critical shift in the crew's journey as the ice begins to tighten its grip on their hopes. Shackleton and his men are no longer thinking in terms of immediate escape, but instead settling into the harsh reality that their ordeal will last far longer than they ever anticipated. With the Antarctic summer fading and the floes increasingly unstable, the expedition transforms into a long, grueling wait, an exercise in patience, ingenuity, and survival. As the ice drifts unpredictably, Shackleton is constantly recalculating their next move. The currents are dragging them farther away from their intended destination, Vassal Bay, and closer to the open ocean. However, the ice is a relentless adversary. It shifts, groans, and splinters under its own immense pressure, threatening their precarious encampments. The men learn to react swiftly to the dangers of the ice breaking beneath their feet, relocating their camp whenever the floe shows signs of instability. Each move is an exhausting ordeal, requiring them to pack their supplies, tents, and lifeboats, only to set it all up again on another floe. During these uncertain weeks, Shackleton's leadership continues to shine. He maintains strict routines and instills a sense of order among the men, knowing that discipline is essential for their mental and physical endurance. Daily tasks are divided, from caring for the dogs to hunting seals and penguins for food. Shackleton insists on keeping spirits high, frequently sharing jokes and participating in the men's activities. He knows the value of morale, even in such dire circumstances. The physical challenges are unrelenting. The men battle frostbite, snow blindness, and the numbing cold that seeps through every layer of clothing. Yet the monotony of their existence proves just as grueling as the physical hardships. Time stretches endlessly, and the men find themselves struggling against boredom and the creeping dread of the unknown. Shackleton encourages diversions. Frank Hurley continues to take photographs. Leonard Hussey entertains with his banjo, and others keep diaries, recording the strange and surreal details of their life on the ice. But even amid the camaraderie, tensions occasionally flare. The relentless cold and isolation test the limits of their patience, and some men begin to show signs of dissent. Shackleton is quick to address any potential conflicts, resolving disputes with a mix of stern authority and empathetic understanding. His ability to manage both the collective spirit and individual personalities is critical in maintaining the group's unity. As weeks turn into months, Shackleton makes a bold decision. They will eventually have to abandon the ice entirely. Their hope lies in the lifeboats, but reaching open water is still a distant prospect. The ice is too thick and unstable for them to travel far, so for now they must wait. Shackleton and his officers spend hours studying the drift of the floes and the shifting patterns of the pack ice, searching for any sign that the time to move is approaching. The dogs, once a vital part of their strategy, become a source of painful decisions. Their food supplies are dwindling, and Shackleton is forced to cull some of the teams. It's a heartbreaking task for the men, who have grown attached to the animals. Yet it underscores the harsh, unyielding logic of survival. Resources must be conserved, and tough choices must be made. The endless drifting on the ice seems to mirror the crew's mental state, a strange limbo between hope and despair. The ice is both their prison and their raft, carrying them toward an uncertain fate. Shackleton, however, never wavers in his resolve. He is constantly preparing for the moment when they will leave the floes behind and strike out into the open sea. By the end of Part 3, the men have settled into a grim routine, but the specter of the unknown looms large. They are at the mercy of forces far beyond their control: the ice, the currents, the weather. Shackleton's ability to inspire confidence and focus in the face of such uncertainty becomes their greatest asset. Even as the environment grows increasingly hostile, there is a flicker of hope, a determination to endure whatever lies ahead. This chapter of their journey is not defined by dramatic action but by the quiet, relentless persistence of men holding on, day after day, to the belief that they will somehow survive. It is a testament to the power of human resilience in the face of the unthinkable. Part 4 of Endurance. Shackleton's incredible voyage captures a critical turning point in the crew's ordeal as survival becomes an urgent and immediate battle against the shifting ice and the encroaching sea. The Antarctic summer has passed, and with it, any lingering hope that they might escape before the ice fully closes in. Now, as the ice floes begin to break apart beneath them, the men are forced into a brutal and unpredictable struggle to stay alive. The breaking ice adds a new dimension of danger to their situation. The once stable floes that served as their camp are now unreliable, fracturing without warning and threatening to plunge them into the freezing water below. Shackleton and his men face constant pressure to relocate, dragging their supplies and lifeboats across the ever-shifting landscape. The effort is exhausting and demoralizing, but it is also essential. The ice is no longer their ally. It is a ticking clock, slowly eroding their chance of survival. Shackleton remains a steady and unflinching presence, though the weight of leadership presses heavily on him. He is acutely aware that the ice is no longer simply drifting toward open water, it is carrying them farther from their intended path and into uncharted dangers. Yet he refuses to let despair take hold of the group. Shackleton's ability to project calm and confidence in the face of chaos is his greatest strength, and the men continue to look to him for guidance. As the ice continues to break apart, Shackleton orders the lifeboats readied for use. The boats, their last hope of escape, become the focus of the crew's efforts. Days are spent repairing, waterproofing, and outfitting them for the harsh journey ahead. The men know that the boats will be their salvation, but they also understand the grim reality. To reach open water, they must cross miles of treacherous, fragmented ice, dragging the lifeboats behind them. The journey across the ice begins, and it is an ordeal of unimaginable difficulty. Each step is a battle against the elements. The sledges carrying the boats sink into the snow, forcing the men to haul them out repeatedly, inch by inch. The ice is riddled with leads of open water that must be crossed carefully, sometimes by ferrying supplies in smaller loads. The men endure freezing temperatures, biting winds, and the ever-present threat of frostbite. Their progress is agonizingly slow, and every mile feels like a monumental achievement. The physical toll is matched by the mental strain. The monotony of the ice, the unrelenting cold, and the uncertainty of their situation weigh heavily on the men. Shackleton's leadership becomes even more vital during this period. He continues to bolster morale, sharing his rations with the men and ensuring that everyone pulls their weight. Even in the face of adversity, Shackleton's belief in their ability to survive remains unshaken, and his determination inspires the crew to keep going. As the march continues, the men begin to bond more deeply. The shared struggle for survival forges a camaraderie that transcends their differences. Moments of humor and camaraderie punctuate the grueling days, providing brief but vital relief from the harsh reality of their situation. Frank Hurley's photographs capture some of these moments, preserving a record of the men's resilience and spirit. But the journey is not without its tragedies. The dogs, who have been loyal companions and invaluable workers, are gradually sacrificed to conserve food and resources. It is a heartbreaking task, one that weighs heavily on the men. Yet, as always, survival dictates their choices, and Shackleton ensures that the decisions are made with as much care and humanity as possible. Eventually, the ice gives way to open water, and the men face a new challenge. The lifeboats must now carry them across the freezing, storm-tossed sea. The transition marks the end of their time on the ice and the beginning of a perilous new chapter in their journey. Shackleton knows the open water will be no less dangerous than the ice, but it offers their best and only chance of reaching safety. Part 4 ends with a mixture of relief and apprehension. The men have survived the ice, But the sea ahead promises its own trials. The lifeboats, battered but seaworthy, symbolize both their fragile hope and the immense challenges still to come. Shackleton's leadership, the men's resilience, and their collective determination have carried them this far. But the journey is far from over. Their fight for survival is about to enter its most treacherous phase, as they leave behind the desolate ice and venture into the unpredictable, icy waters of the Southern Ocean. Part 5 of Endurance. Shackleton's incredible voyage thrusts the men into a new and even more perilous chapter of their journey. The open sea. Having endured months stranded on the drifting ice, they are finally forced to abandon their floe entirely as it breaks apart beneath them. Shackleton's lifeboat plan, which had seemed like a distant contingency, now becomes their only option for survival. The men must place all their hopes in 3 small boats: the James Caird, the Dudley Docker, and the Stancomb Wills. Launching the boats is an arduous task in itself. The ice is a chaotic, sloshing labyrinth, and finding open water to push off into is a challenge. The men struggle to keep the boats afloat as chunks of ice threaten to crush them. When they finally break free, the sight of the open ocean is both exhilarating and terrifying. This is the moment they've been waiting for, but it also marks the start of a new, unpredictable battle against the elements. The Southern Ocean greets them with its raw, unrelenting ferocity. Waves crash over the boats, drenching the men and soaking their meager supplies. The bitter cold is unrelenting, and the men battle frostbite, hypothermia, and exhaustion. Every wave is a reminder of their fragility. These small, overloaded boats seem impossibly inadequate against the power of the sea. Shackleton, ever the leader, divides the men among the 3 boats, carefully balancing their strengths and weaknesses. He himself takes command of the James Caird, the strongest of the lifeboats, and keeps a close eye on the other 2. Life in the lifeboats is brutal. The men are crammed together, constantly wet and shivering from the cold. Sleep is almost impossible, and hunger gnaws at them as their rations dwindle. To keep morale up, Shackleton enforces strict routines. The men take turns rowing, bailing water, and watching for dangers in the ice-strewn waters. Shackleton's calm and determination are infectious. His leadership gives the men something to cling to in this sea of uncertainty. Navigation is another formidable challenge. Frank Worsley, the ship's captain, takes on the crucial task of charting their course. Using a sextant and brief glimpses of the sun through the clouds, he attempts to guide them toward their destination. Elephant Island, a barren and remote outpost that represents their best chance for survival. Worsley's skill and precision are remarkable, but even he knows that one miscalculation could doom them all. The journey is a test of endurance like no other. The men must row for hours on end, battling fierce headwinds and the icy spray of the ocean. The physical toll is immense, but the psychological strain is perhaps even greater. The vastness of the sea, the unrelenting cold, and the ever-present danger of capsizing weigh heavily on their minds. Shackleton, sensing the fragility of their spirits, continues to lead by example. He remains vigilant, ensuring the men are cared for and refusing to let despair take hold. After days of relentless struggle, the men finally catch sight of Elephant Island. The jagged, ice-covered peaks rise out of the sea like a beacon of hope. The sight brings a surge of relief, but the journey is not over yet. Reaching the island means navigating treacherous waters filled with icebergs and crashing waves. The men row with every ounce of strength they have left, spurred on by the promise of solid ground beneath their feet. When they finally land on Elephant Island, the sense of relief is overwhelming. For the first time in months, the men are back on land. They collapse onto the rocky shore, some laughing, others weeping with exhaustion and gratitude. But the island is far from a sanctuary. It is a desolate, uninhabited place, battered by wind and sea, with no resources to sustain them. Shackleton knows this is only a temporary refuge. If they are to survive, they must find a way to summon help. Part 5 concludes with the men huddled on the icy shore of Elephant Island, grateful to have escaped the relentless sea but acutely aware of their precarious situation. Shackleton, never one to rest for long, begins formulating a new plan. The journey by lifeboat was a triumph of courage and resilience, but it is clear their ordeal is far from over. The men have survived the ice and the ocean, but now they face a new challenge: finding a way back to civilization before it's too late. The hope of rescue rests on Shackleton's shoulders, and his unwavering determination continues to be their guiding light in the face of overwhelming odds. Part 6 of Endurance. Shackleton's incredible voyage brings the men to a critical juncture. They have survived the harrowing sea voyage and reached the barren shores of Elephant Island. But this desolate outpost offers little more than temporary refuge. Shackleton knows their journey is far from over. The island is uninhabited, exposed to the full fury of Antarctic weather, and provides no means of contacting the outside world. To survive, they must find help, and Shackleton is determined to make it happen. The chapter begins with the men recovering from their ordeal at sea. Exhausted, frostbitten, and half-starved, they savor the small comforts of solid ground beneath their feet. Yet the island's harsh reality quickly sets in. Elephant Island is a rugged, ice-covered wasteland battered by relentless winds and freezing temperatures. The men establish a makeshift camp on a narrow strip of rocky beach, but the conditions are grim. Their tents are battered by storms, their clothes and sleeping bags are perpetually wet, and the food supplies are dangerously low. Shackleton knows they cannot stay here for long. The leader decides on a daring plan. A small crew will take the strongest lifeboat, the James Caird, and attempt an 800-mile journey across the Southern Ocean to South Georgia, where they can seek rescue from the whaling stations. It is an audacious gamble. The Southern Ocean is one of the most treacherous bodies of water in the world, notorious for its fierce storms and massive waves. The odds of success are slim, but Shackleton is convinced it is their only hope. The alternative, waiting on Elephant Island with no guarantee of rescue, is a slow death. Shackleton carefully selects the men for this perilous voyage. He chooses Frank Worsley, the skilled navigator, to chart their course. Tom Crean, John Vincent, Timothy McCarthy, and Harry McNeish, the ship's carpenter, round out the crew. McNeish's inclusion is significant. Despite his earlier friction with Shackleton, his expertise in reinforcing the James Caird for the journey is invaluable. Shackleton's ability to balance loyalty, skill, and practicality in choosing his team reflects his remarkable leadership. The preparations for the voyage are meticulous. McNeish strengthens the James Caird with additional planks, canvas decking, and seal blood mixed with flour to make the seams watertight. Shackleton and the crew stock the boat with the bare essentials: navigational tools, a small supply of food, and a stove for melting ice into drinking water. Every ounce of weight matters, and the men know they are embarking on a voyage where even the smallest detail could mean the difference between life and death. On April 24, 1916, the James Caird sets off, leaving the rest of the crew behind on Elephant Island. As the 6 men row into the icy waters, the remaining crew watches in silence, their fate now tied to the success of Shackleton's desperate gamble. The James Caird faces immediate challenges. The sea is rough, the winds are fierce, and the small boat is tossed like a toy on the massive swells. Shackleton and Worsley work tirelessly to navigate, using brief glimpses of the sun through the clouds to take bearings and stay on course. The voyage is a brutal test of endurance. The men endure freezing temperatures, constant exposure to icy spray, and the ever-present danger of capsizing. They take turns rowing, bailing water, and trying to snatch moments of rest in the cramped, wet confines of the boat. Shackleton maintains a relentless pace, pushing the men forward even as exhaustion and cold threaten to overwhelm them. His unwavering belief in their mission keeps them going, even in the face of seemingly insurmountable odds. Back on Elephant Island, the men left behind settle into a grim routine. They build a more permanent shelter using the remaining lifeboats, rocks, and salvaged materials, dubbing it the Snuggery. Frank Wild, Shackleton's second-in-command, assumes leadership in Shackleton's absence, maintaining order and morale. Wild shares Shackleton's optimism, reassuring the men that their leader will return with rescue. The men cling to this hope, even as storms lash the island and their rations dwindle. For those on the James Caird, the journey becomes a blur of hardship and determination. Days stretch into weeks as they battle the unforgiving sea, their bodies battered by cold and exhaustion. But despite the odds, Shackleton and Worsley's navigation is astonishingly accurate. On May 8, 1916, after more than 2 weeks at sea, the crew sights the rugged cliffs of South Georgia. The sight of land brings a surge of relief, but the challenges are far from over. The howling winds and crashing waves make landing nearly impossible, and the exhausted men must summon every ounce of strength to navigate the final stretch. Part 6 concludes with the James Caird making landfall on the uninhabited side of South Georgia. Shackleton and his crew have achieved the impossible, but their journey is not yet complete. The whaling stations and rescue lie on the opposite side of the island, separated by towering mountains and glaciers. Shackleton's determination remains unshaken, and his focus now shifts to the next daunting phase of their mission. This part of the story is a testament to human resilience and the power of leadership, as Shackleton and his men defy the odds in their relentless pursuit of survival. Part 7 of Endurance. Shackleton's incredible voyage delivers the climactic conclusion to Shackleton's desperate bid for rescue. After surviving an almost impossible 800-mile journey across the Southern Ocean, the James Caird and its crew have reached the rocky, uninhabited shores of South Georgia. Yet their ordeal is far from over. The whaling stations and the hope of rescue lie on the opposite side of the island, separated by towering, icy peaks and treacherous glaciers. Shackleton now faces the final, grueling task: to traverse the rugged interior of South Georgia on foot, a feat no one has ever attempted. The crew of the James Caird is battered and exhausted. Shackleton, Frank Worsley, and Tom Crean are chosen for the crossing, while the other 3 men, McNeish, Vincent, and McCarthy, are left behind at the landing site to recover. Shackleton promises to return for them once help is secured. With no proper climbing equipment and only rudimentary supplies, the 3 men set out on what will become one of the most legendary feats of endurance in exploration history. The journey across South Georgia is nothing short of epic. The terrain is unforgiving: steep, icy slopes, hidden crevasses, and relentless winds threaten their progress at every step. Shackleton, as always, leads from the front, his unyielding determination driving them forward. Time is of the essence. They must reach the whaling station before their strength gives out, and they cannot afford to stop for long in the freezing conditions. Sleep is snatched in brief, freezing intervals, and their meager rations do little to replenish their energy. The trio navigates by instinct and sheer willpower. Worsley's keen sense of direction proves invaluable, and Shackleton's uncanny ability to make split-second decisions keeps them moving through the perilous terrain. At one point, they reach the edge of a steep slope with no safe way down. Shackleton makes the bold choice to slide down the icy incline, a risky but effective move that saves them precious time. The men follow, hurtling down the slope and narrowly avoiding disaster. After 36 hours of non-stop trekking, the exhausted men finally hear the distant sound of a whistle. It is the Stromness whaling station. The sound renews their spirits, and they push on with every ounce of strength they have left. When they stumble into the station, dirty, frostbitten, and barely recognizable, they are greeted with astonishment by the workers. Shackleton immediately sets about arranging for the rescue of his crew, sparing no time to celebrate his own achievement. The relief effort is a race against time. Shackleton commandeers a vessel to retrieve the men left on the other side of South Georgia, and they are soon reunited with the James Caird crew. However, the greater challenge remains: rescuing the 22 men still stranded on Elephant Island. Shackleton launches several attempts to reach them, but each is thwarted by impenetrable sea ice. Days stretch into weeks, and Shackleton's anxiety grows. He is haunted by the thought of his men perishing while he struggles to reach them. Finally, after more than 3 months since the James Caird set sail, Shackleton secures a vessel, the Yelcho, from the Chilean government. On August 30, 1916, the rescue mission reaches Elephant Island. Shackleton scans the horizon with binoculars, and to his immense relief, he sees the men waving frantically from the shore. Every single member of the crew has survived. The reunion is emotional, the men cheering Shackleton as their savior and leader. For the first time in nearly 2 years, they are all safe. Part 7 closes with a sense of triumph and relief, but also with a recognition of the extraordinary resilience and spirit that carried these men through one of the most grueling survival stories in history. Shackleton's unwavering leadership, the men's camaraderie, and their collective determination against impossible odds underscore the power of human endurance. Their journey is not just a tale of survival, but a testament to what can be achieved through courage, unity, and the refusal to surrender, no matter how bleak the circumstances. And so ends one of the greatest survival stories of all time. Endurance isn't just about Shackleton's leadership, it's about the human spirit's ability to persevere in the face of overwhelming odds. It's about unity, resilience, and the power of hope. Shackleton's unwavering determination and his crew's courage remind us of what humanity is capable of when faced with the unthinkable. If you've been inspired by this incredible story, let us know your thoughts in the comments below. What stood out to you the most about Shackleton's leadership? Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories of triumph and resilience. And remember, no matter how tough life gets, we all have the power to endure.